Mere days to go until we learn which two teams will be at the center of the seasonal bacchanalia known as Super Sunday. And 1 year after America was gripped with the most ridiculous sporting controversies and somebody accused gladiators of having loaded their lances with sneezing powder. All right, let's dig into a hefty dose of the NFL this day with the man who invented the concept of sports business commentary and believes there's nothing better than giving me grief about my game selections once a week. He's hiding this week, doesn't want us to see his face because of his game selections. The sports professor, Rick Horrow. How you doing, Professor?
So, yeah, I was in the wind, but apparently wind is too much for your fragile body to take. Seasonal bacchanalia, did you write that?
Yes, I did, as a matter of fact. Matter of fact, I came up with that right out of my own little head. Which is certainly something that I can write for you one of these days when you do one of your speeches, but then again, I wouldn't want to make them entertaining. Let's go ahead and move on, if we will. The Los Angeles Stadium that is now being built, $1 billion in money, Stan Kroenke is now going to go in hock for to J.P. Morgan Chase and Company. That's one thing, Rick. But you and I have talked about stadiums a long time here. The big thing is to make sure that taxpayers don't have to pay a nickel here. And there apparently is fine print here that says that the city and the taxpayers are still going to have to pay for road work, utility work, public parks on a 300-acre site. Is that fair?
Yes, more than fair. And the bottom line of the reason for that is that if this stadium is going to enable Final Fours and Super Bowls and multi-million dollars of economic impact which people don't question comes from outside for the mega events, then it's worth it. And by the way, the other thing is, in L.A. and New York, I get it. There are reasons why the price points mean that the public dollars are not there other than infrastructure. But in most stadium deals around the country, 2/3 are public money. Doesn't excuse or not excuse. It's just that's what the market bears. And I know it gives you arguments to say that we should use it because there are more priorities. But you know me, for the last 30 years, I've been a strong advocate to talk about economic impact and return on investment. And if you phrase the question, is it fair, then the answer from my perspective is absolutely.
All right, second thing in the NFL this week. The anniversary of Deflategate was actually this week. Bob Kravitz of the Indianapolis Star at the time and WTHR Sports in Indianapolis, he's the guy that broke the story. He came out with something of an apology and said, "Who celebrates a story that inspired death threats and vile comments directed toward my wife and 2 daughters?" Rick, is it not fair to say that this was one of the absolute most ridiculous controversies, quote-unquote, investigations that has happened in sports history? It meant nothing.
Well, all right, so the Patriots win 45-7 anyway. There's a year's worth of rulings that the courts have said are basically wrong with the NFL. They're appealing to uphold the power of the commissioner, not necessarily the substance of this particular ruling. So in retrospect, Bob Kravitz probably wishes that they had just taken their lumps as a 45-7 loser and didn't care what the footballs looked like. But at the end of the day, what's also happened is the commissioner has revised his procedures, coming on the heels of Ray Rice before it and Greg Hardy after it. So we may like or not like the current procedures, but they're clearer today as a consequence of all of this over the last 2 years.
All right, I got about a minute left here. Third story here in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills made history. They have hired the NFL's first female full-time coach. Catherine Smith is a special teams quality control coach. Honestly, Rick, I think it's going to happen. I think if you know the game, I think if you're a good coach, you deserve it. But there are already these neophyte Neanderthals in sports talk radio coming out saying, wait a minute, she's a girl. She doesn't know anything about football. They're just ruining our sport. This is the right thing to do if you know your job, isn't it, Rick?
Clearly, and you're not, God forbid, Ed Berliner, pandering to the neophyte Neanderthals.
No way, in no way, shape, form, or another.
No way. The answer is there are competent coaches, female, male, whatever, and they should be given the right to do whatever they can. The Rooney Rule is a start as far as head coach hiring, and the NFL is moving in the right direction, and this proves it.
All right, and by the way, just so we finish things out on a good note here, you are going with me with my pick that Peyton Manning retires after the game this weekend, right?
Well, I'm doing it because I believe it, but certainly I'm not going for that because you say so. I don't think I've ever agreed with you on anything, even if coincidentally.
I think you have agreed with me in one thing because I think I'm trying to remember. I think 22 years ago there was a time where you picked up the check, but that's just another. Another story altogether. No. And I think you agreed it was your turn. All right, Professor. All right. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Week, man.
Talk to you next week. Take care. Rick Horrow. All right, return to the real world after the break. The terrorist group that may have just helped the free world in hunting them down and fighting them on their own turf. It's coming up next, right here on the fastest 60 minutes of news, The Hardline.